And the men of his city, even the elders and the nobles who were the inhabitants in the city, did as Jezebel has sent unto them, and it was written in the letters which she has sent unto them. They proclaimed a fast, set Naboth on high among the people, and there came 2 men, children of Belial, sat before him, and the men of Belial witnessed against him, even against Naboth, in the presence of the people, saying, Naboth did blaspheme God and the king. Then they carried him forth out of the city and stoned him with stones that he died. Then they sent to Jezebel, saying, Naboth is stoned and is dead. It came to pass when Jezebel heard that Naboth was stoned and was dead, Jezebel said to Ahab, Arise and take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to give thee for money, for Naboth is not alive, but dead. And it came to pass when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, that Ahab rose up to go down to the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite to take possession of it. What it doesn't say in this narrative here, but it says elsewhere, is she not only killed Naboth, she killed every one of his seed. So there would be no one that could inherit the land. Is this woman ruthless or what?
Yes, she was a witch.
So when the Revelation talks about Jezebel, everything, the pattern is set by her character. This is what he said. He's saying that things are so this woman, or this symbol represented in this church, is everything Jezebel was. Jezebel had 400 false prophets worshiping the mother goddess sitting at her table. Her husband, Ahab, who evidently she controlled, had 450 prophets of the false male god, Baal, in his kingdom. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Entered Elijah. See, Revelation talks about Jezebel, and it talks about Elijah, right? Elijah comes in, and he says, or the voice says, the Lord says to him, Arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whither he is gone down to possess it. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou killed, and also taken possession? And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, watch the prophecy. Thus saith the Lord, In the place where dogs lick the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. And Ahab said to Elijah, Hast thou found me, O my enemy? And he answered, I have found thee, because thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. See, it wasn't that he did something in Elijah's sight. He said, God knows what you did. God knows your works. Remember how he started out talking to that church in Thyatira? I know your works. I know everything you do. I have eyes of fire. Jesus is saying. The Lord saw it all. And he said, Behold, I, the Lord, he's speaking for the Lord, I will bring evil upon thee, will take away thy posterity, will cut off from Ahab him that pisses against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. Now what does that mean? Cut off all of his male offspring, right? And this is the king he's talking to. How many of you would have this boldness to stand up in front of the President of the United States and say that?
Get away with it.
And get away with it? Or some other leader, I'm not picking on this country. It could be any country where they're nasty. And I will make thy house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahiah. For the provocation wherewith thou hast provoked me to anger, and made Israel to sin. And of Jezebel also spake the Lord, saying, The dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Him that dies of Ahab in the city the dog shall eat, and him that dieth in the field shall the fowls of the air eat. But there was none like unto Ahab, which did sell himself to work wickedness in the sight of the Lord, whom Jezebel, his wife, stirred up. So that's part of her character. She stirs up the worst in all of us. And he did very abominably in following idols. That's one of the things, God says that this church would do. Right? Fornication and the worship of idols. According to all things as did the Amorites, whom the Lord cast out of the children of Israel. Remember when the Israelites went into the promised land, God said to get rid of them all? And some of them were the Amorites. They were called the Canaanites, right? The Amorites and Perizzites and the mosquito bites and all these ites, right? And it came to pass when Ahab heard these words that he rent his clothes and put sackcloth upon his flesh and fasted and lay in sackcloth and went softly. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, seest how Ahab humbled himself before me? Because he humbles himself before me, I will not bring the evil in his day, but in his son's day will I bring the evil upon his house. I think this verse right there is amazing. He had 450 false prophets lined up, and there was another 400 prophets, and he kills this Naboth, right? And all of he actually let Jezebel do it. But Ahab cried out to God, and God had mercy. This guy's like really wicked. And yet he cries out, humbles himself, and God heard him. I think there's room for us. Okay, now we jump ahead to 1st or 2nd Kings, because we want to see how the prophecy is fulfilled. Okay, the prophecy about Jezebel. Now, when Jehu would be in because there is no J in Hebrew. But when Jehu came to Jezebel heard of it and said, she painted her face, tired her head, and looked out at the window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, had Zimri peace who slew his master? He lifted up his face to the window and said, who is on my side? Who? And there looked out to him 2 or 3 eunuchs, and he said, throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses, and he trod her underfoot. In other words, he was in his chariot. He has Jezebel cast over the wall, and then he runs over her with the chariot. Jehu is the king, by the way, the new king. Do you know Jehu was there when Jezebel had Naboth killed? He saw it. He witnessed it. And he remembered the prophecy. And when Jezebel was cast down, he just rolled over her. And when he was come in, he did eat and drink. This is a real man. Right? He gets done with his job and he wants to eat. But, so he just rolls, he just kills her. And he comes in, he did eat and drink, and said, go see now this cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. They went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands. You see how this was literally fulfilled? Now, why did this happen? This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Elijah, the Tishbite, saying, in the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the carcass of Jezebel shall be as dung upon the face of the field in the portion of Jezreel, so that they shall not say, this is Jezebel. In other words, if they would have just left her body like that, they would have set up some type of worship center. They would have tried to preserve her body the best they could, or her relics of her bones. Did you know all through the world they have, in many places, many churches throughout the world, they have these relics of what's supposed to be the bones of saints. Will they go and kiss and pray to? And does that sound biblical? But they do that. Do you think that they wouldn't have done that with her bones? And so God stopped them from doing that. He got rid of her bones completely. Okay, what time is it? I think that might be. Is that good enough for tonight? Okay, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Well, we spoke about Jezebel. We'll continue now next week about the Thyatira, and we'll see now that we've brought out what Jezebel was, and everything that you saw about this person Jezebel is included or incorporated in that meaning when it talks about this church having this personage, Jezebel. They're listening to this prophetess. What happened when Ahab let Jezebel have her way? Well, he ended up having to humbly cry out to God. He's like, I never asked for this. She just went, took matters into her own hands, signed letters in his name, sealed it, sent it out, had 2 false witnesses stand up and say that this guy blasphemed. Do you know they did that all the way down through Christianity? In fact, there comes something out in this message here of this history of Jezebel and this incident with Naboth, which really speaks of this church age. How many have heard of the Inquisition?
Oh,
This church age we're talking about, Thyatira, for at least almost half the years, the Inquisition ran rampant. Over 500 years, the Inquisition ran. It's estimated that in the Inquisition they killed 58 million or more people. What they would do is they had an agreement with and this was all through Europe. They had an agreement, the church, the Roman church, the Pope, had an agreement with the kings throughout Europe. Said, if we call anyone into the Inquisition and we kill them, we will divide their land and their inheritance 50% to the church and 50% to the king. That's exactly what Jezebel did. She set up false witnesses, and for 500 years through the Inquisition, you didn't even get to meet your accusers. They would just say you did this, and you didn't even know what they said, and then you were pulled away by the Inquisition, you were thrown in jail, and you were tortured with unimaginable, unbelievable things until you confessed. Confess to what? Confess to what you were accused of? Well, it was false. How do you think the church got the Roman Catholic Church got so rich? Who did they do it to? They did it to Jews. They did it to Muslims. They did it to primarily Christians. Even some Catholics. They killed their own. But primarily it was a way to get rid of anyone who wouldn't bow down to the papacy. And this is history. It's reality. You can't change that. I have a question for you before I let you go. There is one of the seals in the book of Revelation talks about seeing all of these people that have been martyred for Jesus Christ. They gave their life for Jesus Christ. And we hear people, when they talk about prophecy, that these are the Revelation saints. These are the ones who went through the tribulation and gave their life for Christ. But here we've got over, 58 million, like I said, just for the Inquisition. But they did it before the Inquisition. All these people, over all these years, being martyred, all the way down through history. Do you think maybe that fifth seal of those martyrs, maybe it's speaking of all these people for the last 2,000 years? What about these people who just had their heads cut off by ISIS? Christians are having their heads cut off. Are we supposed to think that, this bad stuff doesn't happen until, a 3.5 year period? Folks, we are in it. We've been in it for a long time. A lot of these things that Jesus said were going to happen, they've been happening. Now the tribulation is going to be the worst time that's ever been upon the earth. And you don't want to be like this church that was told if you don't repent, you throw you into the tribulation. The good news is we have another voice, we have another promise in that Philadelphia church about the rapture, about leaving, about escaping. But see, I'm not looking for 3.5 year period for all these people to be killed. In fact, our brother George brought it up a couple of months ago maybe, Fox's Book of Martyrs. People have been being killed for Christ's sake all the way down through history. Those people, that's what these people are crying out for. Now, is it right for God just to put His fingers in His ears and not to judge the ones who did this to them? People that have been burned at the stake, people that have been tortured in many different ways, people that have seen all of their children die in front of their eyes and then have their eyes burned out. It's the last thing they see. Torture, like I said, unbelievable. And God says to these, let me read it. God, I didn't expect to read that, but listen what God says to these saints here. It's in Revelation chapter 6, verse 9. It says, "And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls." See, he saw the souls, not the bodies. These people are dead, but they're alive. And that's good news, right? He saw the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth?" And white robes were given unto every one of them. Every one of them. What that tells me, there's no judgment here. These people stood up and gave their lives for Christ. And they were given white robes, every one of them that did. That they should rest yet for a little season until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. They were crying out to God to avenge them. Later on it says to come out from Babylon and not to be a partaker of her sins. The judgment is, you're either, it's God's way of saying you're either with me or you're with that program over there. And if you're involved in that, you need to come out. Because God is going to judge the people that have tortured these people. We read in Revelation chapter 17 about this harlot who has got a cup. She holds up a cup. And it says, in the cup was the blood of the saints. Did you know there's only one? A woman represents a religion. You have the bride of Christ, and then you've got this false counterfeit religion, Babylon the Great. There's only one down through history that killed all these 60 million Christians. Only one. Whose blood is in it? Who's holding the cup? In fact, there's only one religion that associates themselves, actually minted coins with a woman holding up a cup. That's the papacy. I'm going to let you guys go. This is a lot to think about. I hope you didn't. You know, the glorious thing is they were all given white robes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you have to do or what price you have to pay. Jesus is alive. Mm-hmm. Our attitude ought to be just like Elijah. I don't care what the situation, but the God who answers by fire, He's God. If you know God and you know your future, I mean, you don't know every element of your future, but this part about your future, you know. You will live forever and ever and ever and ever and ever with white robes of righteousness. You will sit on a throne with Him as a priest and a king in His kingdom forever, as a son, a child of the living God. If you don't understand living in a kingdom as a child's kid, He's given you the whole Old Testament to read about people that were born like as a child of Solomon and a child of David in the kingdom. You can see how that side gets to live, right? It's tremendous what God's called us to. And it hasn't cost us anything.